The 2005 King Kong and Skull Island are separated by 12 years, a different director, and a completely different answer to one question: what is Kong? Not in terms of lore or mythology, but in terms of what kind of cinematic subject he is. Is he a character you grow to understand, or a force of nature you watch from a distance? Every camera choice, every fight scene, every shot in both movies is a direct answer to that question. And the clearest place to see that is in how each movie chooses to reveal him. The 2005 reveal is anchored entirely to Anne's perspective. We see what she sees: disorienting fragments, close-up flashes, parts of something massive she can't fully comprehend yet. Only after she's had a second to process does the camera pull back for a full wide shot. And even then, even after the full reveal, Kong doesn't feel alien. He looks and moves like a gorilla, just several times bigger. That familiarity is an intentional choice, because regardless of how terrifying he looks in that first moment, that familiar element is what makes it possible for the audience to eventually see him as something more than just a monster. Skull Island does the opposite in almost every way. Kong's introduction isn't just a visual, it's an action. A full-size tree is thrown at a helicopter before anyone even sees him. The music cuts on impact. We get fragments again, but not because the movie is building mystery, it's building dread. A giant hand hits the second helicopter. The camera stays locked inside the surviving chopper as it slowly rises alongside something enormous and furry. We get a partial reveal of Kong as a soldier dangles helplessly from the wreckage, and only after the threat has been fully established does the film give us the full reveal. Kong's silhouette slowly rises. Reaction shots.
Is that a monkey?
The sunlight disappears. And then, a wide angle. Kong standing in full frame. Now here's something worth paying attention to. In my Godzilla video, I talked about how those later films lost the sense of scale, partly because Godzilla kept getting shot in wide angles with too much empty space around him. So why does the exact same approach work here? Because in Skull Island, they're not using human infrastructure to anchor scale. They're using the sun, a cosmically large reference point instead of a human one. That single choice repositions Kong outside of the category of animal, outside of the category of monster. He's elemental. That's not a creature reveal, that's the reveal of a myth. Two films, same character, completely different philosophies, and you know exactly which one you're watching right off the bat. Because the 2005 film treats Kong as a character, that language also extends to every creature on the island. Take the Brachiosaurus stampede. The sequence opens anchored to the human characters. We feel how small they are relative to these animals. But the movie isn't afraid to pull back and show the whole creature, like it does when they start falling off the cliff. That's because the film treats these creatures as animals, not monsters. They're not necessarily malicious. They react to environmental triggers, like how the stampede got set off by smaller predators. From the character's perspective, these are monsters trying to kill them. But from the audience's perspective, we're watching animals in their natural habitat. That tension between those two readings is partly what makes the island feel like a real place. But the clearest example of this film's camera language is in the scene where Anne tries to escape Kong. It starts almost comedic. Anne plays dead to fool him before making a run for it. And because we're slowly getting invited into Kong's perspective, the camera shows us this from his point of view. For Anne, this is terrifying, but for Kong, it's a game. As she runs, his arm slams down in front of her. She tries to go the other way, he cuts her off again. Notice how this is shot. The camera only shows Kong in parts here. His arms violently hitting the ground, his lower body stepping into frame, close-ups of his eyes. That's all Anne sees, and that's all we see. But watch what happens across this sequence. Little by little, the camera pulls back. The shots get wider. We start to see both Anne and Kong in the same frame. The editing slows down. As the relationship between them shifts, the camera shifts with it. From fear to something approaching empathy. And the moment Kong gets angry again, those tight claustrophobic shots return immediately. The camera in this film isn't neutral. It moves with the relationship. That's character-driven filmmaking. Skull Island operates completely differently. Once the film has established how big Kong is, it shifts into spectacle mode, and it shoots it accordingly. Wide to mid-range shots, a camera that spins 360 degrees around the action, prioritizing coverage over tension. The humans largely disappear into the spectacle at this point. We cut to them only when they're about to crash or die, and that's about it. The river scene with Kong and the giant squid is a good example of this. There's a human character right there watching the fight, but the camera doesn't show us Kong through his eyes. He's essentially there to give the film an excuse to show Kong, and the way the scene is shot makes that obvious. Mid to wide shots, emphasis on coverage, no real attempt to build tension through perspective. The only interaction between the human and Kong is a piece of squid that gets thrown in his direction. Otherwise, the guy might as well not be there. And look, I think the way Kong is shot in Skull Island is less interesting than 2005, but I also think it works for what the movie is trying to do. The whole film operates on a heightened reality. The explosions, the music, the Vietnam War aesthetic, the graphic visual style. Kong fits that world. The movie keeps you at a distance on purpose because the point isn't to make you feel close to Kong. The point is to make you feel small in front of him. Both approaches are valid, but they lead to very different action sequences. A great action scene needs clarity, stakes, and consequences. The goals have to be legible, and the cost of failure has to feel real. The T-Rex sequence in 2005 is a masterclass in how to build all of that. The setup is clean. Anne is the target, the T-Rexes are the hunters, and Kong is the obstacle. Every character decision in the sequence follows from those constraints, but the film doesn't just maintain those stakes, it keeps escalating them. Anne barely escapes the first T-Rex before a second one spots her. Kong jumps in, and now it's 2-on-1. Then the third T-Rex joins the fight, and now they're genuinely outnumbered. Throughout all of this, notice what the camera is doing. Because Anne is the goal, the camera stays anchored to her. That gives the film some of its most creative shots, like the sequence where the camera is essentially mounted to Kong's arm, holding Anne while the fight unfolds around her. Every attack from the T-Rex is directed towards Anne, which means Kong is fighting 3 enemies while handicapped by trying to protect someone in his hand. Kong kills the first T-Rex with a rock. Then the terrain changes. Anne gets tangled in the vines with one of the remaining T-Rexes. Now they're separated from Kong. The stakes go up again. He kills the second, and the terrain changes for a third time. And now Kong is in a clean one-on-one fight against the last T-Rex. Anne is safe, Kong isn't handicapped anymore, and this is the moment the film shows us what Kong is actually capable of. He wins easily. 3 stages, escalating terrain, a shift in power dynamic, a clear goal maintained through every beat. And underneath all of it, the fight is structured around a relationship. The Skullcrawler fight in Skull Island is built differently. The 2 creatures are the centerpiece. The humans are present, but not in focus. The film has already done the work of convincing you how big these things are. So now it's just about the spectacle of watching them fight. And as spectacle, it works. The fight has stages too. Kong starts in control, easily overpowering the Skullcrawler. The power dynamic flips midway when the Skullcrawler traps Kong in chains. The humans intervene, which puts them in danger, which raises the stakes. Kong breaks free, gets a hold of a ship's propeller, and uses it as a weapon. There's even a callback to the original where Kong picks up one of the human characters and has to fight the Skullcrawler while holding them. What the animators do with the Skullcrawler's design is genuinely impressive. Every weapon the creature has comes directly from its anatomy. It strangles Kong with its jaws, wraps his tail around him to restrict his movement, and tosses him around. The action is motivated by the creature's design and its limitations. That's what makes it feel real in a way that pure choreography doesn't. But the sequence has a real problem, and it's one of clarity. In the T-Rex fight, the goal is never in question. The T-Rexes want Anne, Kong wants to protect her. Every action is motivated by that. The Skullcrawler doesn't have a clear motivation. It fights Kong until it has the upper hand, then abandons him to chase the humans. The humans shoot at it, but it ignores them to chase a character on foot while armed soldiers are right there. The character motivation is inconsistent, and that inconsistency bleeds into the action. When you can't follow why a character is making choices, the stakes get blurry. Notice how I haven't used any of the characters' name in this analysis? That's because I genuinely cannot remember them, and that's a symptom of how the film treats them. They exist to be in danger, not to be people. In 2005, Anne is the mechanical anchor of the entire fight sequence. In Skull Island, the humans are set dressing that occasionally become useful to the plot. What both movies share, and this is worth saying clearly, is a total commitment to making these creatures feel real at a physical level. The animation in both is exceptional. When Kong punches the T-Rex in the original, the head moves first and the body follows. That's lead and follow, one of the foundational principles of animation. Apply that to every movement and you get something that feels organic rather than mechanical. The first simulation, the water physics when something that large moves through it, the weight in every impact, both film gets it right. Skull Island in particular matches its VFX to the visual style of the rest of the film in a way that's worth paying attention to. Shots like the characters surrounded by green gas while fighting off flying creatures, or the burning framing of the commander against the fire. The VFX isn't just technically impressive, it's cinematically integrated. The philosophical difference between these two films doesn't just shape how Kong is shot, it shapes how his story ends. In 2005, Kong is smaller and more vulnerable than you might expect, given everything you've seen him do. He's taken down pretty easily by human weapons on top of the Empire State Building, and that's not a flaw in the story, it's the point. Think about the scene where humans attempt to capture him. This is the same Kong who just fought off 3 T-Rexes, but when Anne is used against him, that strength becomes irrelevant. His vulnerability isn't just physical, it's emotional, and the whole film has been building towards that moment. The camera work reinforces this. Throughout the island sequence, we've been slowly migrating from Anne's perspective into Kong's, getting closer to him, seeing more of him, spending time in his point of view. By the time he escapes captivity and ends up in New York, we're fully in his head. He stands in the middle of the city and nothing makes sense to him. In my Godzilla video, I talked about how the later movies framed Godzilla in the city like a kid playing with toys. But here, that framing is actually earned because we're seeing the city through Kong's eyes. Everything is fragile. Everything breaks at the slightest touch. The humans barely register. He's not a monster rampaging through a city. He's a character in an unfamiliar world, looking for the one thing that made sense to him. That's what makes his death land. A tragic hero needs to be beatable. The same emotional vulnerability that made you care about him is what kills him. Kong in Skull Island is the opposite in almost every way. Helicopters, machine guns, explosions, none of that does much. He takes damage and gets back up. He's never confused, never out of his element. He's always the most powerful thing in any given scene. And when he does get hurt by humans, it barely slows him down. That's also not a flaw. It's a character decision. Myths don't die easily to human weaponry. So, what is Kong? The reason people argue about which version is better is because they're unconsciously arguing about what they want monster movies to do. Do you want a monster movie to make you feel something? To take you from fearing this strange, unknowable creature to genuinely sympathizing with the emotions coming from him? That's what 2005 does. It earns that shift through every camera choice, every fight, every moment where the film quietly moves from Anne's fear to something we can understand. Or do you want a monster movie to make you feel small? To show you something so large and so beyond human scale that the only response is awe? That's what Skull Island does. It keeps you at a distance on purpose. It never lets you get close enough to fully understand Kong, because understanding him would shrink him. Both are legitimate. Both work. The movies just made a choice. One makes him a character you understand, the other makes him a force you can't.